Well, the SheBelieves Cup is just around the corner, which means we have a Matildas squad to discuss as one Fryer comes in and another misses out and is set for surgery, or may have already had surgery. I'm not too sure, but Sydney FC also pulled off a spectacular comeback only for it to go up in smoke seconds later, whilst the Wanderers set the tone for their match against Western United in the absolute worst way possible, less than 90 seconds into the contest. Melbourne City is still somehow undefeated. There was an F3 derby demolition in Gosford, and so much more on this episode of the Dubcast, part of the Roundball Australian Podcast Network. My name is Poletti, and joining me as always is Burke. Anything that you want to start with? Because honestly, you could pick like 10 different things out of this.
Yeah. I I'd say probably one of the bigger ones is going to be Adelaide beating Sydney for the first time ever.
Yeah, that was
Um,
definitely something.
yeah, they really. I I didn't watch it when it was happening, but I was following along like on my phone and stuff. And that last moment where I got an update on my phone being like, "Oh, they've equalized," and then getting another update being like, "Oh my God, Adelaide." And you know what? Good for Adelaide. They've been having a really good season, and Sydney have not. They did show signs of life, but signs of life is not enough at this point.
No, it's not. So Emily Condon opens the scoring in the 23rd minute and then gets her brace in the 54th minute. Indiana Dos Santos scores in the 65th minute. Millie Farrow equalises deep into stoppage time. And then Chelsea Dorber, about 40 seconds later, decided, no, you know what? We're not losing this game. And puts one past Brianna Edwards, who there's no way she was stopping it. It was just perfectly executed, bottom corner, just out of her reach. Probably a shot I don't think she was expecting, but even then, like I said, I still don't think she's getting to it. I One thing when I arrived at the ground and I saw Mackenzie Hawkesby starting up top as a nine, I was like, what? Like, I
I
couldn't
think
believe
I
it.
think many people were saying the same thing. I was thinking the same thing when I looked at the lineup. Polar Bear in Arlington, Texas, anyone?
It was just, it was such a baffling position for her to be in. I mean, she's a solid midfielder, and I don't think it was any coincidence that Sydney's goal came after Hawkesby was shifted back to the midfield after Millie Farrow came in for Lucy Johnson. I understand Ante Juric's logic behind it, and what we'll do is I'll play the audio for you now, and then we'll discuss that. What was the decision behind starting Mackenzie Hawkesby up front?
Just a bit more mobility and pace. We have to do something. We've scored 9 goals, so I'm not going to sit there idle. As a coach, I never have. So we've got to try and make things happen. And she was quite good. Made some forward runs. First half, she was good. Second half, even better. And that's not our position. So it was just more about mobility and trying to get numbers forward quickly and more energy than we've had recently.
So, having listened to Juric's explanation, Burke, where it was about providing mobility, providing something different up front because they had only scored 9 goals coming into the game that needed to try something different. And I understand the idea behind trying something different, but like as we discussed on the show last week, Abby Lemon has had barely any game time up front. She came on in this game as a left back at halftime for Faye Bryson, who, as Ante said, was taken off for non-injury related reasons. I thought it was something to do with the very nasty head knock that she suffered in the first half. You've got Amber Luchtmeyer not in the matchday squad, a previous NPL Women's New South Wales Golden Boot winner, and I know a lot of people are getting sick and tired of media bringing up that stat, but 23 goals in 23 games is absolutely nothing to balk at against defences that, for the most part, are similar in quality to A-League women's sides. You've got you've got this idea of needing something different, and so you're putting a midfielder up top who just has never played really in that position. It's not where she does her best work. But that's your answer to your goal scoring drought, is to play a midfielder out of position? I don't get it.
Yeah, so I understand the idea of needing to try something different. I don't think a tried and tested midfielder is the different you should be trying. But yeah, what would I know? I'm not a head coach. Yeah, it wasn't the way I thought things would have gone. But if that's what Ante wants to do, that's what they're going to do, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, as I said, Ante has to try something. I thought it was the wrong thing to try at this point in the season, particularly when, look, I don't think he's exhausted all of the options. But I'm going to paraphrase something that you said last week, Burke. We're not coaches, and thank God for that.
Yeah.
The other thing that struck me from this press conference post game is it was asked a question about Princess Abini and her her continued starting and everything like that. And this isn't necessarily something I've thought about too much, because it seems just something that Ante was going to do all along, right? Like I looked at Abini when she came off the NPL season a couple of years ago for RPR, where for the entire length of the season it looked like all she was doing was just running around. Didn't really look anything like a footballer. It was almost like it was just fitness for the sake of fitness at points. And then I don't think it was any coincidence that season, when she came back into the A-League Women, I believe that was the first 18-game season, it took her about 6 weeks to get into anything resembling form. She's played 150-odd games. She's one of the best players that the club has, as Ante said. But, I mean, at what point do you have to consider trying something different and not starting her? And I know Ante said that, she's always going to start and he's not going to give game time for the sake of game time. But as he said, 9 goals coming in. Could that not have been something to look at there? And this is not a knock on Princess Abini. As I said, fantastic player. And I'm certainly not trying to rush her out the door or anything like that. But, take a game off the bench sort of vibe. Maybe she comes in, takes advantage of some tired defenses. Let a couple of the younger speedsters up front try to do their damage early. I don't know. I'm not a coach, and I'm not going to pretend like I understand the dynamic there. But I think, like I said, I think the part of that quote that stood out to me was she's always going to start, and I don't think anyone should be starting just because, Burke.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a clever way to coach a team. I do understand the concept of like stalwart players. I'm very familiar with them, but if they're not performing in the role that you have them in, what are we doing? What are we doing? Maybe she does need some time out just for the sake of having some time out. It can't be good for, like, I know it wouldn't feel good for me to have to continuously go out week in, week out and not score any goals or pick up any assists or anything like that. I know she has scored in recent weeks, but like, yeah, I can't imagine it'd feel good having to play this way. So
Yeah, I can't imagine it would either. So Sydney FC now in must-win mode, as Ante Juric said. I mean, I thought they were in must-win mode for the last 3 weeks, but he's clearly identified the number, which means they've got 9 games to go and they basically need to get the maximum amount of points. There's no room for error, so I think we can take, from that the number that's on his board is somewhere around the 35, 37 point mark. He also criticised the standard of officiating and identified it as a season-long problem, Burke. I respect the fact that referees have an incredibly difficult job to do, but I think Arte might have a point here.
I wouldn't say he doesn't, but given the culture that we have surrounding referees, it's not an easy thing to criticize them. I know often watching games, you'll see calls, and this happens in every game of every sport ever. You'll see things and you're just like, okay, that wasn't a free kick. That wasn't, you know, that was that ball out should have been a corner. It wasn't missed in front of goal. Um, but yeah, there probably are some things that should be looked at to do with the refereeing. It'd have to come from the top down, though. There's no point in, you know, fans or media or I guess really even coaches, yeah. There's no point in like us kind of yelling about it because we're just the fans who will end up looking biased. But I do think, yeah, to an extent, Ante definitely has a point there because there have been some pretty egregious moments that have been refereed in a very interesting way. Um, but yeah, that's something for them to look at. I'm not gonna sit here and act like I know the rules of the game better than they do. Maybe there's a bit of a disconnect between how the rules are being interpreted. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's important to note that every week the referees go through a review performance with Football Australia head of referees John Moss, and they're sort of working out what was missed, what wasn't missed, what was right. Could this have been interpreted slightly differently? But one call that certainly created a lot of debate over the weekend, and you used the words egregious, Burke. Mariners 5, Newcastle Jets 1 in the F3 derby. Claudia Chico, was it a red card?
I I don't know. I don't know. I didn't see enough of it to actually say because I didn't see the whole game. I only saw parts of it. Um, did she get yellow cards during the game, or was it this just the straight red?
No, it was a straight red for denial of an obvious goal scoring opportunity.
Mm, if it's Dogzo, I don't know how much I can argue with it. Um, I can understand why she would have put in that kind of a challenge, considering the game. Um, yeah, I can't. Unfortunately, can't. I won't make a clear-cut comment there.
No, that's fair. Look, for me, I think the referee got it right. It's obvious goal scoring opportunity. And I understand there was another defender tracking back, but the opportunity to get a shot away was taken away from her. And so I like obvious goal scoring opportunity. I think that I think it's more than fair. But the Mariners absolutely ran roughshod in this game. And it's hard to believe at one point in this game it was 1-1 before the Mariners just decided, nope, we're gonna put the Jets to the sword here. But it's now 5 red cards for the Jets this season. Per Andy Howe, the previous most in the season achieved by multiple teams is 2. If we exclude the Tash Pryor one and this Chico one, which has sort of delivered a little bit of debate about it, the other 3 have all been deserved red cards. 2 yellows for Sheridan Gallagher, and then Krasiniak with her 2 absolute brain fade errors. What is going on in the Hunter? It's baffling that a team can accumulate this many cards in a season, Burke.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's been the goalkeeper multiple times is just insane to me. Um, I feel like, and I feel like because of it, I'm becoming desensitized to like red cards being given out to goalkeepers because it doesn't, like, they're not really a thing. But sometimes, like, I think I saw the notification come up on my phone for a red card, and when I saw it was this game, I was like, oh my God, is it Krasiniak again? Like, that was my immediate thought. I was like, ah, now what? Is she on the halfway line touching the ball? Not this time. Sorry, force of habit. Force of habit, my bad. Um, I don't know what they're doing in the Hunter, and it, yeah, because it's weird that it's all from, or mostly from the goalkeeper. It's very strange. Whatever they're being coached to do at, or I don't know, because even the Sheridan Gallagher red was just like, I don't know if it was frustration boiling over in that she made those two challenges like stupidly in like a moment of seeing red, but I don't know what they're doing. I don't know if they know what they're doing, to be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting, and this takes us to our first listener question from Rachel on Blue Sky. What on earth is Krasiniak's problem, and would you like a Jets fan to come yell about her? To answer the second part of that question, yes. To answer the first part of the question, I don't know. Like,
I have been saying
I,
this.
I'm
I've been
very
saying this for weeks. We need to stop the league until we can work out what is wrong with the goalkeepers. There is something so deeply, deeply wrong with all of them that they've all just been doing the craziest things. Like, I don't know if there's a keeper at this point that hasn't done something just absolutely absurd, but I do believe that Krasiniak does have the highest rate of insanity moments to time on field. Um, yeah, I'd love to know what her problem is. I'd love to know.
Yeah, I mean, look, for me, I think at this point, someone like needs to come up with a formula for like XIM, expected insanity moments, and then compare that
Yeah,
to Krasiniak and just how far above that she's performing in
yeah.
terms of this. Just quickly on the Mariners here, 5 different goal scorers across the 90 odd minutes. They're back inside the top six. They're doing well. I mean, I don't like the Mariners have had points this season where it's like, okay, they haven't quite lived up to expectations, but they're just playing well when they need to play well, Burke.
Yeah, I think Emily Husband, she's got them really well organized. She's a great coach. I think they're timing their run really well in that I feel in the beginning of the season we were seeing a lot of draws out of them, and now they're starting to kind of push through to pick up more points as the we get deeper and deeper into the season. Yeah, they look really good. Really good. Even with the losses that they've had from injuries, they look good.
Yeah, I mean, look, hopefully the Mariners will continue to perform. The idea of them going, back-to-back final series in just their second year, having re-entered the competition, I think would be absolutely fantastic. Western United 4, Western Sydney Wanderers 1. The tone for this game, as I said, it was set 90 seconds in when Sham Karmas, speaking of goalkeepers having a brain fade moment, gives away a penalty, doesn't save it, and if the Wanderers' defeat of Western United 5-1 earlier this season was an anomaly, this feels not only like the get-back game for Western United, but this is Western United playing at their best. But I also have to wonder how much we can take from this game, given that this now puts the Wanderers into double-digit losses for the season, and they're the only side so far to have double-digit losses.
Yeah. I kind of feel bad for them at this point. They're not like, I almost wish there was a way we could just like gently forfeit them out of the competition, just so we didn't have to keep watching this happen. But if we did that, then we wouldn't get to see Siena Silvestre score Olympicos. So, unfortunately, Wanderers, you will have to continue.
Yes, the second time this season that Siena Silvestre has scored an Olympico against Western United. I believe that we're on track for the most Olympicos in a season, if not already surpassed it. For this one, though, this one, unlike her first one, where it was just missed by everyone as it, went into the box and bounced past, everyone because there was a gap left. This one went all the way to the far post and banged in behind the goalkeeper. I mean, look, you've been to Tane, Burke. Does the
Mhm.
assist have to go to the ground design at this one? Like, because it looked like it got just caught completely in the wind, and that was what assisted it here. Because, like,
To
I
both,
think, I think the Western United goalkeeper was in position for what was the expected trajectory of the ball, not what actually happened.
yeah, look, it's a very windy ground because, as I have said, there is nothing around it. There are no buildings, there are no trees, there's nothing. So yeah, you might have to give half a point to half of an assist. Sorry, that's the word I'm looking for. Half of an assist to the grand design, or maybe to the lack of design. One of those.
And speaking of poorly designed grounds, let's head out to Melbourne's east, to Casey Fields. 1-1 draw in the Melbourne Derby. This game was originally scheduled for 5 p.m., pushed back to 6 p.m. because of the heat. I just. I don't want us to have the heat discussion again, Burke, but this. Western United and Melbourne City at the time of recording Tuesday were supposed to be playing tonight. That game was pushed back 24 hours because Melbourne is going through an insufferable heat wave at the moment. And I ultimately the right decision I think was made here, but you've got a situation where the game couldn't have even been pushed back because the ground doesn't have adequate lighting. And Anna Harrington made this point on the Far Post podcast where you've got this idea behind, the fact that the second half of this game was fantastic, but it was very clear that the players had already suffered through the heat of the first half, and therefore that impacted the quality of the second half once it had started to cool down, and they couldn't push the game back any further because the field just does not have lighting that meets broadcast standards, Burke.
Yeah, who would have thought a training ground doesn't have lighting that makes it suitable for broadcast? Not me. I wouldn't have thought that. Um, yeah, City just aren't losing a game, it seems. Maybe they'll do what they did last season, but they'll do it better and worse. They'll refuse to lose, and then they'll lose the last game that they need to win. Um, knowing their luck, that is what'll happen. Um, yeah, the Speckmeyer goal looked really good. It looked really good. Shame they waited until the 89th minute to do that. But yeah, it looks really good. As for the low goal, I can't remember it because I only saw highlights. My bad. Um, but yeah, I think I think the draw was probably the correct result. I wouldn't have been too surprised if Victory had have come away with it. But at the end of it all, the draw did feel like the correct result to me.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair on the balance of probability. Look, I don't want us to have the heat discussion again or the
No.
quality of venues discussion because we've had it so often this
Mm-mm.
season, and this might be something that we re-tackle again in the off season when we've got more time to dig into it in depth. But for now, I think if you want to hear anything we've said, go back and listen to past episodes. We've covered that in depth already. Canberra 1, Perth 0. 3 shots for Canberra in this game, 1 on target, 1 goal to Liz Anton. And this stat comes courtesy of Ben Smith, who put it in his article for the West Australian. Perth Glory have only conceded 2 shots on target to Canberra United this season across their 2 games so far. They had the game together at Unite Round. Those results, a 1-1 draw and a 1-0 loss. Two shots on goal and 1 win, 1 draw, Burke. For Canberra. It's baffling to me that a side could concede 2 goals on 2 shots and only get a point from those games.
Yeah, it's a very interesting stat. I don't think I've ever seen a stat like that before. I guess props to Canberra for making their shots on goal count. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. There was just sort of both stunned silence and just marveling in that fact. I mean, can we put the line through Perth Glory making finals this season now, Burke? They are, if I pull the ladder back up, they're in 9th. They're 7 points behind Wellington, who are in 8th. In terms of the last top 6 spot, they're 10 points behind. We've got 9 games to play. That just seems like too much of a gap to make up, doesn't it?
Well, people still want to say that Sydney are going to make finals. Why can't we say Perth are going to make finals? What
I
about
mean,
that?
they've got 2 points on the Sky Blues, so they could.
See,
If
they're
if
2 points ahead. They could do it. I don't know if they will, but they could.
but yeah.
I think if anything, it feels a little unfair to Perth to be ruling them out at this point when people aren't willing to rule out Sydney. That's where I stand.
I mean, I'm certainly not one of those people. I've been putting the line through Sydney FC
No.
for weeks now. So
I put the line through Sydney in week 1. But other people are still out there being like, well, I put the line through Sydney immediately, like as soon as I started following this league. I don't want Sydney in finals. But yeah, it feels a bit harsh on Perth that people are still being like, no, Sydney will sneak into finals. Like, why can't Perth? Why can't Perth? The only people that aren't sneaking into
why
finals at
can't
this
Perth?
point are Western Sydney. That's it. Everyone else has the potential to sneak. Not Western Sydney.
Well, I think Western Sydney are only 1 week away from being mathematically eliminated from finals anyway. But yes, why can't Perth? Why not, indeed? Brisbane keep their finals hopes well alive, snapping a 3-game losing streak in their win over Wellington, take them back into 4th place. Grace Kalamu had the game's only goal. Look, for me, Burke, I don't think there's too much to take from this game, unless you had any big thoughts on that.
Wellington had something like 22 shots in this game, and no goal is really all I think that there is to say. I think, because I wrote about this one for Impetus Women's Football, I think Wellington looked really good, especially in the first half. They, like I said, they had a lot of chances. They just couldn't get one to go over the line. And Brisbane lost Leia Varley, I think around the half-hour mark. She came off injured. And she's been a serious stalwart for them this season. So I think they did really well to kind of regroup and not lose confidence in their defense, even though she had to leave the pitch. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sort of sums this game up perfectly. Not a whole lot to talk about other than, yeah. So actually, yeah, I think it's time for us to move on to Matilda's chat. So Lainey Fryer is in, Sian Fryer is out. Sian Fryer surgery for an ankle after we were told no, it's just a bruise, everything's fine. But players getting injured ahead of national team camps seems to be happening way too often in the A-League Women's. Chloe Lincoln is in as the third choice keeper. For me, those are the only two surprises. Like, I looked at this as just basically a stock standard Matilda squad. Like, it's sort of what we knew was coming, Burke.
Yeah, I mean, my real point of excitement, other than Lainey, I never do it right, Lainey Fryer, is the return of Holly McNamara after her ACL. I personally, because I heard from her earlier, towards the end of last week before the Big Blue, she was talking, I don't know if they already knew then, and she was just being very nonchalant about it, very, very chill. She was like, yeah, I'm just taking everything as it comes. Like, if I get the call up, I get the call up. It's really, that'll be exciting, but I'm focusing on Melbourne City. And there she is, called up. Because she's only played about 8 games, and I think only started 2 of those. So yeah, good for her. I'm excited to see her back in the national team setup, because last time she was there was 2022, that ill-fated Asian Women's Cup. Let's not dwell on that. Let's move forward.
We don't talk about that tournament. That tournament didn't happen.
What tournament? I actually don't know what you're talking about.
Asian Cups? I don't even know her. Look, for me, I think that didn't come as a surprise to me, because I just expected that once she came back, she was just going to be there, like just with the way her form was. So I don't think that was a surprise to me. But it's great to see her come back. Full 23-player squad. So Tom Sermanni, when he met with the media to discuss the announcement, he spoke about Holly McNamara, Lainey Fryer's inclusion, the challenges with the squad. And we'll play that audio for you now.
Well, it was quite challenging, as it is with when you normally pick a squad, probably a little bit more challenging than the squad that I had to select last year, in the sense that it's been a while since we've been together. We have players that are sort of starting pre-season. We've got players that are just coming off a winter's break. We've got players that aren't necessarily playing regularly in their club teams. So, putting it all together with the amount of names and things that we have, there was some difficult decisions in the selection, but I'm happy with the squad that we've selected. Since September, it's a situation where, I might be here next. Obviously, I'll be here for the SheBelieves. After that, I could be here for the next window, but then it could be that the Federation have a coach in place that happens very quickly. Things in football have got strange twists and turns and can happen quite quickly, or I could still be here for some time.
When we spoke last year, I think you said ideally a new coach would need the whole of every window this year to prep properly for the Asian Cup. Is it being compromised at the moment, notwithstanding that your own talent in this team?
I think I said, so my memory's not good, but I think I said that ideally, if he had a year to prepare for the Asian Cup, that would be it. I was asked that question, and I pulled out that time frame. However, that's dependent on a lot of factors. So if somebody comes in to the job, who's got a good knowledge of the team and a good understanding of football in Asia and things like that, then that time frame doesn't necessarily have to be as long as that. So it depends on quite a lot of factors. Also depends on where the squad's at that particular time, because it might be, say for example, somebody doesn't come into July, then if the squad's still fairly settled and organised by that stage, then it's a lot easier. If it's a squad that's still in some state of flux, then it's a little bit more complicated. So as I say, I just sort of generally put a generic timeline on it. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of Holly because, you know, she's had a horrific time with injuries. But when you look, it's a great question, because when you look at the qualities that Holly brings, and she's brought by going straight into the W League, that's the kind of qualities that I want to see from players in the W League. You know I get a lot of questions about selecting players, A-League women, sorry. I get a lot of questions about selecting players from the local competition. And what I would say to that is, I want players in the local competition to make me stand up and select them. And that's what I want to see when they play. And Holly's just come straight back in, and she's already shown those kind of signs. You know, she's been dynamic, she's been aggressive, she makes great forward runs, and she's a winner. So I want to see more of that from A-League women players.
Can I ask about Leighton Fry? Obviously, she's having a blinder with Brisbane Roar. What led you to pick her for this squad?
What made me pick her for this squad is that, again, she's shown qualities in the A-League women that's excited me. You know, she's scored goals, she's got involved in games, she's created chances, and she's shown the kind of form that makes you say that you think she can probably step up to international level. So although she hasn't had a lot of experience at club level, it's a great chance to see if somebody can go from that level and step straight into international football. Been in contact with Courtney over the last couple of weeks. She's just not at the stage yet where she feels comfortable coming back into international football. She's back in training with Carolina in the NWSL. So I think it's just important for her to get club football under her belt, get back playing again, get back to the love of the game, for want of a better expression, and hopefully when she does that, then she'll be ready to come back into international football.
All right, one more question.
Just on that, Tom, what is the issue with international football?
You're asking me all these difficult questions today, Tracy. And I'm not being evasive. It's just, she just feels at this stage, she just feels both mentally and physically just not ready to come into camp. That's probably the sort of simplest explanation that I can come up with that. She's just trying to get herself back in to sort of playing football and enjoying football at times. You know, I think you know, a lot of athletes, particularly highest level, have certain degrees of stress levels that some can cope with and some find it challenging, and at the moment she's just finding that challenging.
So Burke, some fascinating insights from Tom Sermanni discussing, you know, the squad choices, and a couple of things that we we sort of played the audio on the second one here, but like he said, Sam Kerr's still injured, which is a big reason why she wasn't picked for this camp. He put her timeline sort of around mid-March, when he expects she'll take a football field again. Obviously, there's the ongoing court case, which started today at the time of recording, Tuesday, overnight in the UK. We're not going to touch on that here. I'm sure if you want to find out plenty of information about that, there'll be other places to discuss it, but that's not for us to talk about. Courtney Vine, he was asked about her, and we played that audio at the end. Still not at the stage yet where she feels comfortable returning to international football. I think that says a lot about where she's at, Burke.
Yeah, and I don't want her to rush. She can take all the time that she needs, and I don't want people to take this the wrong way, but if she doesn't want to come back at all to international football, I don't think that's a bad thing either. She's a fantastic player. She has been incredible in the W League, to paraphrase Tom Sermanni. And I know she'll tear it up in any league that she goes to, if she doesn't want to be an international footballer, there's nothing wrong with that either. Like, yeah, it'll be a loss. Like, it's a loss for us, but I hope she doesn't, I hope she knows that she isn't actually obliged to do it. Like, that, like, it's okay. Some people aren't international footballers. That's fine. So, if she wants to come back, I hope she does, but I hope she does it only when she wants to.
Yeah, I mean, we've had the discussion before around Courtney Vine, where she got thrown into superstardom quite literally overnight, and that messes with people if they're not expecting it. I mean, I think back to Courtney Vine's timeline where she was starting to get on the radar of a lot of people. She talked about, I believe it was an interview with what was then the Fox Football podcast when they still had the rights, and she was talking about, at that point she was still working at, I believe she said it was JD Sport, and she was working out the back in the receiving dock and sort of, all that sort of thing. And then fast forward a couple of years later, before the 2023 World Cup, where she's sort of still on the periphery of the A-League, of the Matildas squad. She's not quite a full-on cemented member yet, and she's still playing NPL in front of like 20 people. And I think it was almost like a year to the day or something that, before the penalty shootout where, she was playing a game for Sydney Olympic in front of, like I said, 20 people, and that was what she was doing. And then fast forward a year later, and she's a household name around the entire country, and has just had that thrust upon her simply because she's playing football and did something spectacular at the right place at the right time, which was great for the Matildas in that tournament. But, maybe someone else scores that winning penalty, and suddenly it's not Courtney Vine that's thrown up in lights. It's
Anyone else.
One of the other players who's, yeah, exactly, and maybe this isn't happening, but, she's gone into overnight superstardom that was thrust on her, and so, I don't blame her in the slightest for needing to take, mental health breaks and just step back and look after herself, because the year that followed was insane for her. Like, the first Sydney derby after the World Cup, which was round one, there was only really one player that got a cheer from the entire crowd when the pre-match lineups were being read, and no prizes for guessing who it was. It was Courtney Vine in front of 11,000 people. And then Sydney FC's attendances skyrocketed, and every week it was 2,000, 3,000 people wanting a photo with Courtney Vine, wanting an autograph with Courtney Vine, and sort of that was it. People were there to see her, and if she gets the move to the North Carolina Courage off the back of that, and all her performances, and I mean, moving overseas is tough if you're going to a foreign country. I mean, I can only speak having moved interstate for work, and that was a tough experience on me. I can't imagine what it's like to move to a different country with a different culture and all of that. So, as you said, and I think you said it perfectly, we just need, all we want is Courtney Vine to be at her best and get back to where she is. I think, whatever level that is, I think that's all we want at the end of it. I mean, but moving on to the rest of the announcement here, and this is where we'll get into some more of our listener questions. So Rachel on Blue Sky, Lainey Fryer too soon. Alex on Blue Sky, what do we think of Lainey Fryer's call-up? Lou on Blue Sky, thoughts on no Aussie Kayla? So just a note on that one. Kayla Morrison still not eligible for selection. FIFA's dealing with paperwork. If Kayla Morrison was eligible and didn't get the call-up, I'd say it is one of the biggest snubs of all time, because she absolutely deserves to be there. But, there's just that little qualifier of the fact that she's still not eligible. But Lainey Fryer, I've been thinking about this one since I saw the news. It was first reported by 10 News Queensland last night ahead of the announcement, so that was Monday night. This is someone who's had a professional contract for less than 6 months, has played a handful of games, scored a handful of goals, and is being thrust into the Matilda setup. And I understand, Tom Sermanni, answered the question perfectly when he was asked about Laney Fryer, and I completely understand his logic, Burke. But I mean, she's had all of like 10 games, 12 games, a handful of goals, 6 months on a professional contract, and Matilda's call up. I think it is too soon.
I don't know. I mean, she's having a really good season. Is that not the point? You reward the really good performances with these call-ups. And like I don't think it's early. I don't think it's too early. I don't think it's too soon, but I think it is early. We'll find out whether or not she's, ready to kind of cut her teeth on the international stage. There are definitely other players with a bit more seniority that could have been called in over her, but are injured. I'm thinking of like Amy Sayer or Sham. But yeah, I think it is early. I don't think it's too early. What I think it actually is that my mind is still coming to terms with the thought of players getting called up at like a normal age, because I'm so used to them being like, yeah, a 15-year-old, get her on. Like I'm thinking about Ellie Carpenter going to the Rio Olympics at like 15 and pocketing Megan Rapinoe. So I'm still trying to understand that people can be called up later, and that can still be too early, or that can still be early for them. But yeah, no, I don't think it's too soon. I do think it is soon, especially considering she's only been playing professionally. Is the dub even considered professional, or is it semi-professional? Whatever it is, she's only been doing it for like 6 months. So yeah, it is soon. It is yet to be determined if it is too soon. I mean, she may not even get any minutes, honestly. Like they may just be using this call up as a means of gauging if she's going to fit now or if they need to call her back up later. So, yeah.
Yeah, and like Tom Sermanni talked about his status as coach here. And I mean, like for me, perhaps this call up, as you said, is just sort of an assessment call up. The train on player designation without using the train on player designation, to sort of get a look at her in this setup. Because I mean, depending on what happens with Sam Kerr, like Michelle Heyman can't continue forever. Although I'm sure she'll certainly try to. You need that goal scoring depth up front, so it could just be a case of seeing what the next options are and trying to create that depth that we sort of all criticised Tony Gustafsson for, but I think it's because he went about it, quote unquote, the wrong way, in terms of, just throwing all the kids in the deep end against Spain and Portugal, because why not? And I know that was forced because of injury and rest and all of that, but, just that sort of, creating depth the right way, quote unquote, Burke.
Yeah. And the other thing is there are other. I'm trying to think who was there in the last window, because you've got Katrina Gorry's come back as well, and Briley Henry hasn't made this squad, but I do believe she's still kind of on her way back from a concussion. So if in a completely different scenario where Briley Henry hadn't been concussed a couple of weeks ago, she might be the one that's getting this call up, which means we wouldn't be, doing the whole, is it too soon? Is it too soon? Because she's been in a couple of camps before. So, this is all a result of many dominoes falling. One of them being her own sister getting injured. So, which is very unfortunate for
Yeah.
Sean, and I'm very mad about it. Stupid ankles.
Yes, players stop getting injured, please. No ankle injuries, no ACL injuries. We don't need them. We don't want them. No injuries, period. But just my thought was when you just re-emphasize the too soon point, we're having this discussion. And I know I'm the one who brought it up, but it's just like, no, it's too soon unless we can bring them into camp. They've already got 20 caps. They're already veterans of the Matildas lineup. Otherwise, it's too soon for anyone to get called up.
Yeah. But then how are we we're not gonna have anyone. There'll be no one left.
I mean, yeah, it's, I don't know, just a little bit of joke there, I think. I think we'll get to the last couple of listener questions now. And we appreciate every single question that comes in that we get an opportunity to talk about. From One Ishi on Blue Sky, might be a bit late, but any chance we might get an investigation and apologies for another Saturday matches being streamed on 10 Play until about the 70th minute of the games. Look, this one is probably a back-end issue at Channel 10 and Paramount sort of vibe. I mean, you go through this effort, Burke, of, when this Channel 10 deal started, we had one game of A-League women on free-to-air each week, one game of A-League men on free-to-air each week, and then year two, it's everything gets moved to streaming, bar select games. This year, we've had a couple of games on free-to-air outside of the summer periods. But I mean, you go through all the effort of promoting the fact that it's free to watch. It's not behind a paywall or anything like that, whereas a lot of the A-League men's is just behind a paywall outside of the 2 games a week on Channel 10 or 10 Bold. But you then have an entire weekend where the games just aren't starting until they're already half over on the free-to-air service. I mean, there's a lot of people who don't pay for Paramount Plus that want to watch the A-League women, and I mean, for me, it's not good enough, is it?
No, it's really poor form. It's kind of like your whole thing as a streaming service that the content is available to be streamed. So yeah, I doubt there'll be an investigation or an apology because this is the world that we live in. It will, I don't imagine anyone's gonna say anything about it from 10's end. Simply because I don't think they care enough to do that. Honestly, it'll probably end up being that someone forgot to press a button somewhere. Someone forgot to click start or something. But yeah.
I mean, the most obvious explanation is sometimes the simplest one, and that would make sense. To quote former Manly Warringah Sea Eagles coach Jeff Tooby, there's got to be an investigation. Our last question from Tim Coughlin on Blue Sky. Only 5 player benches in the dub, with one being a keeper. Given keeper subs rarely happen, this is structurally limiting potential development minutes for squad players, and is particularly wasteful for heat-affected players needing rest in Australian scummer. Why only a 5-player bench is the cost issue. So we actually covered this a couple of weeks ago after Beth Gordon played on an injured ankle for about 20 minutes during Canberra's victory over the Western Sydney Wanderers. Go back and listen to that one. We sort of answered that question then. I think this might be a topic that, again, we've already looked at one early in this episode that might need to be tackled in the off-season when we have more time to give it the effort and time that it needs. It's sort of very limited when you can sort of only maneuver things in 5-minute at best intervals, when some of these topics need, a good 20, 30, 40-minute discussion with all of these different experts and the like. And so if you sort of think of anything that you want to see discussed in more depth during the A-League Women's off-season, please let us know. You can leave a comment in the YouTube video and we'll take a note of them. Or you can do that on Spotify, Apple, or let me know. Blue Sky is probably the best way to do that, and we'll take a note of all these and we'll try to create some off-season content as it relates to that. And same with any questions, put it in the YouTube comments. I put a weekly call out on Blue Sky asking for comments. When I remember to do so on Twitter, I do it there as well. I quite often forget because I try not to use that platform anymore. But we absolutely love getting all your questions every week, and we can't wait to get more of them as the season moves on. But Burke, I think that will do us for this week.
Yeah, thank you for bearing with me and all of my technical issues. But we got there.
We got there indeed. Yes, we got there indeed. Look, we don't have this show without you, Burke. I've said that before. Because who wants to listen to me rant about women's football for an hour? There's no show here without you, Burke, so it's worth sitting through all these issues for. That thankfully the listener doesn't get to experience because of our fantastic editing work by our producer, Lockie Avil. But that will do for this episode of the Dubcast, part of the Round Ball Australia podcast network. We'll be back next week on Wednesday, same as always. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.